This bag. Lots of new projects in this, or never before seen projects. Hello, I'm Chanel. I'm a physicist, teacher in training, and a recent college grad. And I'm also a knitter and a spinner, which is why I'm here in front of you. Welcome to episode 15 of the pipernell podcast, which is my little crafts-focused podcast where I talk about the projects I'm working on, but also how I'm navigating the adult world and kind of trying to incorporate my creative and scientific interests. So today is August 22nd, and I am coming to you from New Jersey, where I am currently doing a teaching fellowship. You can find me on everywhere on social media. The ones that you should know if you want to keep up with me are Instagram and Ravelry, and I'm pipernell, Pipernell, on both of those. And I also have a Facebook page where I post podcast updates. I share pictures and knitting crafts related stuff. If you want to have podcast related stuff show up in your Facebook feed, then go check out that page. So hello, thanks for checking me out. If you're a new viewer, if you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back and supporting me. So today we have some cow news, kind of FOs, and a lot of whips, bit of spinning, actually acquisitions. Since I'm on a budget, I don't always have acquisitions every episode, but this one's pretty exciting. And if you're a returning viewer, you might notice, well, first of all, I got a little haircut, and I got new glasses. They're bigger and squarer, and I like them. My mom cut my hair, and then I cut her hair. Trade. So today's episode, I changed up the format a bit. If you are a returning viewer, you might know that I usually do a section called Life Updates, but this episode I'm going to try something different and break up that section and try to incorporate it while I talk about my projects, because I realized, I don't know, last time while I was recording, I felt like while I was recording, I was like really reaching for talking about what was going on in my life, and I just felt like I was just following a script by the end. And that didn't feel good for me. Also, I think just the way like my life is now, having that set section doesn't make as much sense, because when I started this podcast, I was still in college, and I didn't know about my post-graduation plans. I didn't know I'd be taking this fellowship, and so I had a very clear goal with my life to, find something after graduation, and now that has happened, and I don't have that set goal anymore, and I've kind of, set my course for the next few years, then it doesn't really make sense to me to have updates working towards a goal. So whatever happens, and this kind of ties into the title of this episode, which is just a mishmash word that I came up with. So I want to try something I've been trying to do for a long time, is to incorporate all these different interests that I have, even though I've been very interested and very passionate about science and math for a long time, I've also always, since I can remember, had an artistic side. Actually, like, my artsy side probably came out before I even found out I was good at math. Like, I would be drawing and painting as a little kid, and then this was before I, started elementary school, and then I got to school and found out I was good at math and understanding science. And that's always been kind of a source of tension for me. And I feel like also sectioning off my podcast like that doesn't really reflect that effort. So hopefully, this will make this podcast episode more cohesive, and also maybe my thinking more cohesive. So please give me feedback on this format, and let me know what you think. Oh yeah, more about my mishmash word for the episode title, portmanteau. That's the word. So I was thinking about all these different contexts that I'm in and how they're interconnected, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll title this episode Interconnection, or I'll just do some not so clever, honestly, wordplay and call it Intercontextion, because there's multiple contexts and inter means between, so I'm figuring out what's between contexts and how to make those relationships. Anyway, enough babble. It is a great day in New Jersey. It's nice and not tropical and not boiling humid. There's a nice breeze coming in, but I've closed the windows so that the street sounds aren't so loud. So on to Cal News. There are 9 days left in the Kip With Me Kip Along photo challenge that I'm hosting on Instagram and Ravelry, and all of the prizes are ready. There are 3 prize packs, and if you stay till the end, that's when I'll go over what the final prize lineup is. So this was my first Cal, and it can't really be called a Cal. It was open to a lot of stuff. It's just a photo challenge. It's really simple to enter. Go on Instagram or Ravelry. First of all, take a picture of yourself knitting, crocheting, crafting in public. So far, we've only had pictures of knitting and crocheting, but I've been pushing for someone to spin in public or tat or something. I recently found out there's a spinning in public day. I can't remember the date, but I'll put it in the show notes. By the way, the show notes are in the Ravelry group, which I forgot to mention in the intro. The Ravelry group's name is the Pipernell podcast. So, show notes are all there, and I'm pretty detailed with the show notes. Alright, so the prizes for the photo challenge, the Kip Along, include my skeins of handspun. So the entries will close on August 31st, and I will do the prize drawing on September 1st. I know that's the middle of the week, and I don't know my schedule yet. I might end up doing the drawing that weekend. We'll see. Anyway, so that's the Kip Along, my first Cal. I am so grateful to everyone who's participated so far, and thank you for making my first Cal, which I was honestly stumbling around in the dark a lot. Thanks for making it a success. So next coming up we have the Transitions Make-Along, which I am co-hosting with Mars of the Brownberry Chronicles podcast, and that starts September 2nd. So that's coming up real quick. Get excited for it. I'll talk more about it at the end of the episode. That brings me to FOs. So I said I kind of had FOs. I'm kind of reaching with this section. I felt like I had to have something, and this is the closest thing I have to an FO. It's a MOFO, mostly finished object. Honestly, it's probably still got quite a lot of work to do on it, but it is the second of the hand puppets I'm making for a friend's project. And this is the body. So, like the first one in the series, which you can go back through my previous episodes and see, it's basically a bulky sock. So you start with a ribbed cuff, and then I knit and stockinette, did some stripes. It's a little messy there. Knit some stripes, came to what would be analogous to the heel flap, and I actually ended up doing kind of a tapered thumb flap here, because I like the look of it, and I wanted a different kind of shape for this guy's head. And then did basically what is a short row heel, and then worked back up the flap. And then, so last time I showed this, I think I was just here. I had barely finished the thumb flap. And so when I came back to the palm, which the top side of the inside of its mouth is. I decided to mirror the taperedness of the lower jaw and kind of decrease along this. So since I was knitting in the flat, that meant that when I picked up the stitches along the back of the hand, I had to increase these stitches to keep the width of the puppet consistent. I probably could have gone with a little taper, but I think it's better to have more room, especially because I'm trying these on with my hands, and my hands are pretty small, and my friend is a bigger person than I am, so it's better to be safe. Anyway, I'm stuck in some random garter rows there, just however I felt like it, and then basically did a toe decrease and Kitchener. So yeah, it's a mutant sock. So finishing touches on this dude, I still have to put eyes, need to make the eyes and stuff them. And to cover up the ugliness, I think I do want to put in a beard. And I've been looking up how to do the loop stitch in knitting because that would make a pretty cool look for a beard. So that's my mofo. Puppet number 2. And to fill up the rest of the FO section, I actually have a couple of historic FOs. So I am currently on vacation. Maybe that's why I seem happier and more relaxed. And last week, I have 2 weeks of vacation, and I spent the first week actually visiting my parents back in Las Vegas. And being the pragmatic people that they are, they encouraged me to bring the 2 suitcases that I used to move all my stuff over to New Jersey, bring it back home, and then load it up with winter clothes for this winter, which will be my first real winter. We'll see how that goes. So, among the winter things I brought were some of my, warmest knitted objects from before. Both of these I knitted while I was in undergrad. And the first one is this Banff sweater. The pattern is Banff, B-A-N-F-F, not B-A-M-F. But that would be pretty cool, actually. Ooh, maybe I could duplicate stitch, Banff on the chest. That'd be pretty cool. Anyway, so the yarn I got from a friend's grandma's D-stash. Basically, his grandma was not knitting as much anymore, and so he brought a big suitcase of her yarn to just kind of give away to people at school who were interested in it. And I grabbed this factory bag of bulky 100% wool yarn, and I have no clue what breed of wool this is. The label, the yarn tags were in Japanese, and all I could pick out was 100%. And Japanese has a lot of characters that are identical to Chinese characters, which they're called kanji. The Japanese call them kanji because they're borrowed from Chinese written language and just kind of imported into their written language. And it was the characters for sheep wool, so that's all I could pick out. And the name of the yarn was Fjorden, Fjorden. I've tried looking it up on Ravelry. No such entry for that kind of yarn exists in the database. So if anyone has heard of that brand, I'd be curious to know more about it. So anyway, the pattern is Banff by Jenna Wilson, and it was published in Knitty Winter 2003. The yarn is, I would say, I'm guessing it's bulky. I also wasn't able to read the weight. But it's this really nice funnel turtleneck. I'm not sure. It's oversized. I'm not going to put it on. I would die of overheating. There's a very deep rib, and when I recorded my first episode, I was actually knitting my second sweater from this pattern, though that version was heavily modified because a friend had seen me knitting this sweater and asked for a lighter weight version, which I took as a very interesting challenge to modify the pattern. So that's the Banff sweater. I really like this gray. It's not next to skin soft for most people, I would say. I can wear it fine. I would have layers underneath, but nothing between the collar and my neck, and I'd be fine. But it is a little scratchy. It's super warm. Next historic FO is also 100% wool. It is a cabled cowl. I'll just put it on real quick. Because it looks, I don't know, this cowl looks really different when it's not on versus when it's on because it's so long. The yarn is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes in pomegranate heather. And the pattern is a Lion brand pattern, so it's kind of a generic name. It's called Cabled Cowl, and then there's some number to identify it. Anyway, it's this really nice deep red, and it was one of my first projects. Well, I made it in my first year of knitting when I was a junior in college, and I started it in the winter because it was a really cold winter even in the Los Angeles area that year, and I wanted a really warm cowl or infinity scarf. This isn't an infinity scarf because you can't wrap it twice, but it is great. Anyways. And so you can notice a few mistakes. So I guess the difference isn't as pronounced now that it's been kind of squished up in storage. But you can see that, so the cables here, this can be read like a timeline almost. I started at this end, this is the cast on edge, and this is the bind off edge, and the cowl took me like 4 months to make. It was a repetitive pattern, I was a fairly new knitter, and so the cables were kind of exhausting to make. Now I feel like I could breeze through this pattern. And so I was still kind of a newbie at cabling, and so I did something weird with these cables so that you see they don't pop as much as like these cables, and they look kind of squished up. I did something weird with the working yarn. Anyway, it's not noticeable at all when I'm wearing it, and it actually still looks great. I wonder if you could use that somehow intentionally in a design. I don't know. I'd have to go back and figure out what I did, but collapsing a cable like that. Yeah. So that's my kind of BS FO section. Now on to my more substantial and onto a more substantial whip section. First off is the piano scarf. I know, right? 2 episodes in a row and I'm showing this. Even though I showed this last episode, I normally skip a couple episodes between showing this, or I have been. But this time, I've made significant progress since last episode. Because it's been vacation, I've had a lot of travel time. Not all of it was enjoyable. Because flying can be terrible sometimes. Oh man, I'll tell you the story as I go. So, this is how much progress... Okay, so I put the stitch marker here last time I showed it. Oh, black shirt. Okay, nice contrast there. And I have made this much progress. For comparison, when I showed it last episode, compared to the last time I had shown it, which was like a month before the last episode, or even more than that, I had only made about this much progress. So this meant that I was knitting a lot. That's because I was carrying this project with me as I flew back to Vegas, and I did bring a couple of projects with me to my parents' house, but I didn't really work on them because this one was just out and most convenient. I just kept working on it. But I also had a lot of airport time on the way back because summer thunderstorms caused my plane to get delayed, and I had a layover, and my plane got delayed. My first leg of the flight got delayed so much that I missed my connection flight. My plane was supposed to take off at like 3:30 in the afternoon, and it just kept getting delayed and delayed until the plane arrived at the gate at 7. So I had to eat dinner, and I just like bought a sandwich at the airport and ate it with a grumpy face on. And we ended up not being able to take off until like 7:30. So my layover was in Chicago Midway. If you follow my Instagram, you might have seen my adventures at Chicago Midway. And because I had my connection flight was actually the last flight to Vegas that night. So when I first heard about the delay, I was like, oh crap. All right, I gotta rebook my connection flight. Got in line for the desk. Of course, everyone is trying to rebook their connection flights. So while I'm in line for the desk, might as well call up the airline, like customer service for tickets and reservations. And I have to get a flight for the next morning. So get in at Chicago around 9. Well, like 8 central. Is it central time, because Chicago is an hour behind the East Coast. And I find that I looked on Google and saw that Chicago Midway actually has a nice little room full of cots for emergency, for basically passengers that are stuck in airports. I think it gets a lot more use during the winter months when like hordes of people will be stranded by snowstorms. This time it was summer rainstorms that was stranding people. And so I found this room. First went up to a security guard and like, hey, I've heard that Chicago Midway has a cot room. And so he led me there. And it's just walk in, rows and rows of cots. You know, standard issue, you get a pillow and a blanket, but it's totally free travel tip. I feel like all airports should have this. And get in, it's like I stay up for maybe half an hour more. It's about 9 or something, and I just crash. I fall asleep for the night. The room was security guarded the entire time, which was really nice. And the security guard was also just like super sweet. I think if you're in that room, then everyone knows you've been screwed over by some airline or some situation. So they're just extra nice to you. And then they woke us up at 5:30 because they had to close the cot room. But before we left, they actually all gave everyone sleeping in the room. There were only like 5 people there out of like, I would say like 40 or 50 cots. But they gave us all this nice little care package full of hygiene supplies, toothpaste, toothbrush, some lotion, wet wipes. Yeah, it was really cool. So, flew out of Midway. Actually, there was all sorts of things. Like the guy I was on the phone with, who rebooked my connection flight, rebooked it wrong. So I actually had to get onto a different flight on standby. And then my return trip was also screwed up. He had somehow like made my reservation disappear. Anyway, I already complained about all of that to customer service, so not going to repeat it here. Back to piano scarf. Yeah, while all of these delays were going on, I was just knitting to pass the time. Because even though I had all the necessary chargers and electronics on me, I just did not feel like staring at screens anymore. I feel like this is definitely my travel project, despite, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people would travel with like a sock project or something, but this is nice, and by this point it is mindless knitting. I know the designer of the pattern, Nathan Taylor, who also has an awesome podcast of his own, the Sockmatician podcast, when he was making his, the sample for this pattern, when he was a significant way through the scarf, he also said that it had become mindless knitting for him. And I agree with him. Now I see why it was, because the pattern gets pretty intuitive. I know it looks complicated now. It's a huge chart, but I feel like I can just intuit the pattern and where the color changes should happen after repeating it. Also, because I've done a couple repeats by now, I can just look down the scarf and copy it. And, I just take it out and I know how to go on with the pattern. And I don't have to worry about, like, if I was knitting socks or something, I'd have to worry about, like, the leg length and, like, if I am making the sock too long, if I should be turning the heel. So, yeah. That's piano scarf. The yarn is Cascade Heritage Sock. The orange gradient red slow self-striping yarn is in the wave color family, and it's solar, and the dark gray is charcoal, and it's in the solids color family. And needles I'm using are US size 3 or 3.25 millimeter bamboo needles by Gu, and they're pretty great. That's it for piano. Next up is a new whip. Recognize the logo? Recognize it? So my good friend Shannon at the Sock Setter podcast sent me 2 bags. You're going to see the second bag in a bit. And this one's for me. I really like the colors. It's like green and blue. It's also a super cute pattern. Oh my god. And it's perfect for a sock size, but I'm not using it for socks. I am using sock yarn though. And it is the start of a baby sock yarn blanket. So I am a yarn Scrooge, as most of you will know or will find out. And I was really motivated by Shannon, and she's co-hosting it with Mina of the Knitting Expat podcasts. I was really motivated and enabled by their summer blanket blitz cal, which is just a really chill knit along where you grab some sock yarn scraps and do something with it. So I decided to start my own sock yarn scrap blanket. The pattern I'm using is the 10-stitch blanket. I know it kind of looks like a checkerboard now, but the 10-stitch blanket starts in the center, this teal square here, and then you spiral out. This is a mitered corner, as you can see there. You spiral out, and my plan for it is to do contrasting corners. So because I just started, each corner is as big as the section, the straight segment, so it looks like a checkerboard. But some of the yarn I'm using, if you recognize, this is from my Across the Spectrum shawl, which was the Across the Pond shawl pattern by Mina Phillip. And this is also from the same shawl. This was a mini that Kina of the She's Crafty podcast sent me as a thank you for participating in her first cal. This is some opal sock yarn. I think this got a pretty cool part in the pattern repeat. I still have some of the yarn left, and I'm saving it for a longer section so that more of the stripes can come out. And so yeah, it's been pretty fun. I like deciding and arranging where the colors are going. But I have one question. Okay, all y'all people working on sock yarn blankets, how do you manage your yarn? Because I've just been kind of stuffing like the leftover balls into the project bag, and they just kind of get all messed up. Again, the pattern was the 10-stitch blanket. You've probably seen it somewhere, by Frankie Brown. I did knit the circular version of it, 10-stitch twist, and if you go back through my past episodes, you can see the progression of that. The needles I'm using are US 1 or 2.25 millimeter aluminum DPNs. I bought them from a retirement community's D-stash, so I'm not sure at all about the brand, but they're pretty sturdy. They have not bent at all, so that's good. The next whip, are some socks. So, although you've never seen these socks before, they were actually started a while ago. So, I believe while I was recording, I think episode 10, these were on the bed next to where I was sitting, and I forgot to talk about them, or I just didn't care enough about them. I don't know. So I started it at the beginning of the summer, so June, before I moved to New Jersey. And then when I moved over, I forgot to bring it. They are also, so I left them on these needles. They're Gu Lace US size 1 needles, which are my favorite sock needles. And so all summer I was like, where are my favorite sock needles? I don't know. They were just sitting at my parents' house all summer. with a forgotten sock project. The yarn, maybe it's because I wasn't terribly attached to the yarn. I had gotten the yarn. This is this pink purple variegated yarn. I don't really know much about it. I bought it from someone's D-stash, and it seems to be because there's this white swirl going through. Let's focus there. There's this white swirl going through the strands, and I've seen sock yarns like it, and they're mostly cotton, wool, and nylon, maybe elastic blends. So like patent stretch socks or Plymouth soccata. I don't know. But now that I'm knitting them up, they seem actually I'm quite enjoying this project. They're toe up, which is not normally what I do. I decided to do toe up because I'm not sure about the yardage in these balls. I'm holding them in this bag, which isn't really a project bag. Now that I have a real project bag made by the lovely Shannon, I understand why people use them. This is just one layer. It's a drawstring bag that my mom had in her closet. It's super cute though. But because I'm using like such thin needles, they can just poke right through the fabric. Yeah. But they're in this bag because I was carting them around this morning when I had to get some fingerprints done. Bureaucracy. So they're toe up. I did rounded toe increases, just like I cast on 24 stitches with Judy's Magic Cast On, increased every row for like 3 rows, and then after that I increased every 2 rows about like 3 more times until I eventually or however many times it took to get to 56 stitches, which is a good size for a comfy fit for my feet and my mom's feet. I'm actually thinking of giving these to my mom because she really likes purple. So if you notice, there's a bit of texture on this yarn. It's a plain sole, but the texture I'm putting on this sock, kind of just going, knit, purl, and then knitting the next row, and then purl, knit, and then knitting the next row. So alternating straight knitting with seed stitch. I think this is pretty similar to the broken seed stitch sock pattern, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. I'll link it in the show notes. And that's it. I just turned to heels when I was coming back from fingerprinting on the train. My train got delayed so much I was able to finish both heels while I was in the train station. So that just says how late the trains were running. I don't know what was going on. There was some calamity in New York. I don't know. Because all the trains going in or out of New York City were delayed. I don't know. I hope everything's okay over there across the Hudson. Next whip. I told you I have a lot today. This is a whip. Sorry for the crinkling. Get it out. This is a whip that has not appeared for quite a while. It's because it's been hibernating. This is the Sand and Sea top that I'm making for a friend. And it's back because while I was also at my parents' house, I grabbed the balls of yarn that I had left for this project there. And it is almost done. All I have to do is just keep knitting down this other panel of the top, and basically you knit it in one piece, knit the head hole, and then once I'm down here and I finished the identical ribbing, then I just seam up the sides. And the yarn that I'm using, the blue body, is made from 100% silk yarn that my friend got from India. So she gave me the yarn, and then I was like, oh man, this is so great. And I was helping her brainstorm what to make with the yarn. And then we picked out the cap sleeve lattice top by Pearl Soho. She's not as experienced of a knitter, so she was intimidated by the project. It's really a pretty simple pattern. I could have I think if she had tried it, I would have been able to help her along the way. But I was interested in the project enough that I just took the yarn from her and I'm making it for her. Though honestly, it's been so long, she probably would have been better off making it herself. And it'd probably be done by now. The needles that I'm using are US size 5 or 3.75 millimeters. Though the needles on this currently are actually US 3 just because I slipped the stitches to a needle to hold it. I use my US 5s a lot more than the US 3s. So I wanted to just hold the stitches using a set of needles I don't use that much. Alright, that's it for everything on my needles. Wow, that was long. Before I go into some spinning, actually, I'll take a break before spinning, but before that, just wanted to talk a little bit about a needle adjacent project. So since I'm on puppet number 2 and that's almost done, I'm starting to think about puppet number 3. I'm not really sure what color combo I want to use, but this is these are the scraps of acrylic that I have left. And it's quite a colorful collection. I think I want to use a lot of these yellows. That'd be cool. So yeah, just brainstorming. This is what will be used for it, and that's what you'll see next time. So I am going to take a break, as I promised. And when I'm back, I will be talking about some spinning and some acquisitions. I'm back, and it's time for some talk about spinning. This is my main thing to show off. I finished the Wensleydale's skein. So, as you can probably guess from the name, it's 100% Wensleydale wool, which is a long wool. It's a really long stapled fiber. And the way I spun it was from the fold, so I guess that makes it woolen spun. There's a lot of air drawn into the fibers as you're drafting it and spinning it. So this skein is super poofy and squishy. It's big. It's from a normal 4-ounce braid, but I feel like it's so much airier than what I've spun before. And I spun it, so it came in a variegated yellow-green braid. And because I was spinning from the fold, I tore it into little chunks and arranged them in the gradients. So it goes from this kind of lemony yellow-green to this darker emerald green. And I did chain ply it. Last time I showed you just the singles for it. And I chain plied all of the singles. My spindle was so packed by the time I was done. It was just like, it was actually not able to stay on the spindle. My spindle couldn't handle it. And when I was winding it off, I actually just like popped the entire cop off the spindle, and it had already started unwinding, so that took forever. But super squishy, and this is going to be a prize for the Kip-Along. Next thing I have is just a continuation of this practice project. Even though I am done plying the Wensleydale, this has become a project in its own right. So my friend Mars, who I already mentioned at the Brownberry Chronicles podcast, she gave me some lace weight yarn and asked me to chain ply it. And I've actually really enjoyed doing it. Just it's soothing. I feel like I'm also getting to practice making my chain plying a lot more even. So this is commercially spun lace weight. It's Knit Picks gloss lace, which is merino and silk. I forget the proportions. I think it's 70% merino wool and 30% silk. And so I have plied one entire 50-gram skein of it, and this is the second skein. I didn't bring it, but you can find a picture that I posted of it on Instagram. And that's all I have for spinning. Pretty quick. I want to move on to acquisitions, actually. Gotta get them gainz. And this is actually the last section I have that's related to fibery stuff. First up, I got this roving. It's merino. And so the fiber is from Wild Plums Fiber. And it's just super pretty, pastel-y. Oh, it's just so pretty. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I'm probably just going to squish it for a while. Yeah. Then the next one. So all of these acquisitions are my treat to myself since I finished my summer internship with the fellowship. And we were at a summer camp. It was tiring, it was challenging, but in the end, I really loved working with the kids, and because it's a summer camp setting, a lot of it was just getting to play with them. But my reward for surviving the summer, I mean, part of the challenge of this summer was also I am in a new area. I have to figure everything out while getting used to a new job, new school, and everything. So I thought I'd treat myself to some yarn. But I have a specific project in mind for this yarn, so it's not like I'm just feeding the stash. I don't have much of a stash, actually. But I promised myself I would only do this project as a treat to myself. So here are the 3 skeins of yarn I got. I asked the shopkeeper to ball them up for me. Anyway. This is from Yarn Cafe Creations, and I'll link the Etsy shop below in the show notes. And these 3 skeins are worsted weight yarn. It's 100% superwash wool. I don't think it's merino. It doesn't really feel like merino. But, so it's not like super, super, super soft, but I bet once I give it a wash, it will really soften up. So, the colors going from, is this video going to be mirrored? Okay, so by my thumb here, this is Russell, or Rustled, Russell, yeah. The middle one is Kale, and this left one is Holy Guacamole. I think you can tell from the Wensleydales and from this, I'm kind of on a green kick right now. Oh, and here's her tag. She's based in Heber City, Utah. Oh yeah, okay, here it says 100% superwash wool of the Andes. The project I have planned for this is the Lin shawl, which I'll link to pattern, and it's actually going to be for my next cowl with Mars, or Mal actually, the transitions make along, and more about that later. Oh, I love this color combo. One more thing that I got from her shop just because. Sock yarn. Of course, had to get it. Look at that speckling. Isn't that really pretty? Okay, yeah. There's the nice little teal, but it's kind of still fading into the creamy white. And then there's just splotches of this orange, red. It reminds me of cayenne pepper. And then there's some black. So this colorway is Ocean Mist, and it's on her main sock base, 75-25 superwash merino nylon. And I don't know what I'm doing with it yet. Sorry, that was a Facebook message. I don't know what I'm doing with it yet. I know I'm going to make socks with it, but I've never worked with sock yarn that has just slashes of color like this. I've seen her knit up a sample, and I'm looking through patterns. But this is, yeah. That's all I got. That's all that's new with me. So let's wrap this up. So as I promised, last thing I'm going to talk about is the Kip With Me or Kip Along photo challenge prizes. I have 3 prize packages. 2 of them are for Instagram entries, and one of them is for Ravelry entries. And so I'm going to draw winners from both places. And I've been doing all the bookkeeping, so I know there's some chatter in the Ravelry thread, but that's fine. And I've had to filter some of my own like entries out of the Instagram tag, and that's fine. I just keep an Excel spreadsheet. So, first one. So here is the promised second bag that Shannon sent me. She sent me a bag, one for me and one for you. This is a sock setter project bag that you could win. This is for the winner of the Ravelry thread. This is a hand-spun skein of Finn sheep wool. It is also a gradient from a dusky pink to kind of a purple, grayish purple. And it matches really well with the bottom purple fabric that she chose. First Instagram prize is the Wensleydales with a pattern donated by Marcia of the Fairy Little Twitch and Stitch podcast, which is her I always mess it up. Schmancy shawl, which gives you some ideas for, hey, hint hint, you could use this for the transitions now. And her pattern would also look lovely in, honestly, any yarn. She shows it in a solid color, but I think it would look great. It has a, like, kind of stockinette or garter. It has a plain, simple center with a lace edging, and that center would look great in any yarn, variegated, solid, tonal, gradient. And then last prize pouch. I've been watching too much Steven Universe. The Pearl prize pouch! Last prize package for the Kip With Me photo challenge is this skein, which is 100% merino, and I've been calling it the Wool Gems, so you can win this skein, lovingly called the Wool Gems. I guess also connected to Steven Universe there. And look at that barber pulling. I know Mars is in love with this. It's up for grabs. And so yesterday I was at a local stationery store in the city I'm in, Montclair, and I picked up these things that coordinate with it. Mostly, first it was this pouch. I think those blues go really well. And this is a handmade pouch by the shop owner, and she was selling it for half off because she was trying to reduce her inventory. And it's this cute little, you can use it for notions, coins. My mom's kind of addicted to coin purses, so it makes me think of her. Also, it's just this design. It's also nicely padded. And then, to coordinate with that, I have a little New York notepad for all your knitting notes, for just jotting down ideas. And this is the third prize package. So, if you haven't entered the Kip With Me photo challenge, better do so if you want a chance at winning one of those. And the photo challenge, again, ends in 9 days, August 31st. Maybe 8 days by the time you hear this, or this is probably going to get uploaded tomorrow. So yeah, we have about 70 entries. I'm wondering if we get it up to 100. And I'm so excited to see who gets to win these. I forgot one last thing. So I usually do an on my radar section where I provide some sort of recommendation, and really, really short one. So one of the last things I did when I was visiting my parents, my brothers were also both home, which is good. We went out to see a movie, and that movie was Kubo and the Two Strings. It was amazing. Go see it. I know it's marketed as a kids movie, but I'm kind of an adult. I was legitimately scared by a few parts. The fight scenes were great, but also the music, the visuals was amazing. There's a huge focus on family. It's drawing from Japanese folklore, and it's always good to see representation of non-Western cultures. It's all stop motion too. Stop motion movies are amazing to me. And you get a little glimpse of it behind the scenes in the credits, and it's like, oh my god, please go see it. It is really good. Kubo and the Two Strings. And that's all I have for this episode. I don't know when the next episode will be, so my roommate and I almost have an apartment nailed down. But our move out date is the 31st. So whenever I record next episode, around 2 weeks, as I've been doing, we'll be somewhere else. Yeah, no clue when that's going to be. But next time you see me, the transitions now will be swinging. And I will see you then. Alright, have a good rest of your day. Bye.